Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Bishop Dansby, and I'm coming on to remind you about our broadcast for our Bible study at New Creation Christian Fellowship this evening at 6 o'clock. I want you to join me because I believe this is a significant time in God as I began to talk about following God's mind. Following God's mind. We live in a time where there is conflict between man's will, God's will, and the will of the enemy. And if you don't have the capacity and the capability to follow the mind of God, you will never find yourself in the place of power in God. For the last 33 years, I have been in ministry, in a pulpit ministry, guiding and directing the people of God, serving them with all my heart, my mind, and my soul. But the thing that we have to realize is that it is just as important to be in the will of God as it is to do the work of God. If you're doing the work of God and don't feel like you're in the will of God for the season you're in, then you have to be willing to hear God and pivot at his demand. Somebody ought to shout glory right there. Following God's mind means it's his will for your life shifts, being willing to put away all doubt, all fear, all inhibition for the will of God instead of the place of power and the place of authority, and being willing to serve in the capacity that God called you in. Well, tonight I'm going to talk about some of those things, engaging transition from being the senior pastor of New Creation Christian Fellowship to just basically being I guess what you would call the presiding bishop over the church there. No pastoral duties, none of the day-to-day, just making sure the ministry has life. I just want you to understand it's much more important that ministries exist, live, and thrive than it is for one man to become the center of all ministry. And as I move in this direction, there are always, doubts and inhibition and attacks from the enemy as to whether God is speaking or whether you're speaking out of your own self. One thing I do know that God has spoken to me about different seasons in my life. And those seasons, I have not leaned to my own understanding, but in my ways, I have acknowledged God. This is what I'm doing in this hour. And I just think that this evening at 6 o'clock, you don't want to miss this broadcast. I believe this broadcast is life-changing, and it shines a light on the way that churches have decided to transition from pastor to a new senior leader. I believe that churches have been devastated by the death of a pastor, by the sickness of a pastor, or just by a pastor staying too long, not willing to give the young men in their environment an opportunity to stand behind the sacred desk, but standing there even when the health fails, even when the enthusiasm, their zeal, believing that their calling somehow gives them the right to decay before the people rather than transition to a young man that's stronger, maybe even wise, and maybe even greatly anointed. I always have been committed to God. And commitment means dedication and service at a high level. And the level of functioning as we age declines. And until we're ready to deal with that and put the church in a position to succeed and go forward and exist far beyond, I have given my life to serving God. And I'm going to serve him till the day I die. My capacity to serve as well as the capacity which I serve in will always be at the discretion of my God. Now you better come and listen this evening at 6 o'clock. I just think if you don't, you're gonna miss something. Well, God bless you. And this just is something to prompt you to join me at 6 p.m. right here where you listen now. You'll be able to join me then. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a great